Here we go.
I was giving you a chance to start tonight.
I know.
We should have planned that before. I'm should I talk? No, wait.
I was like, but the music's so fun. I'm just like,
yeah,
okay, right? Just dancing to the music. How you doing?
It is fun music. I'm glad we picked that one.
So, I like that music. I have jury duty tomorrow.
Oh.
So if I get sequestered, which is going to probably not happen here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Hey, Mike, good evening. How are you?
All right.
Yes.
We got a viewer. Yay.
Yeah. So I have jury duty. When I was in Maryland, I got out of it once for childcare. The second time I was in the group that they said didn't have to come. The third time it was a snowstorm and they shut the county buildings down.
That's handy.
I know. So now I am going to have to go tomorrow, which I can walk there. It's like 2 blocks away. So we'll see if I get picked. I don't know.
I'm also close to our county courthouse, which is really convenient because I got called for jury duty once, and I actually had to come. And the courthouse was having some kind of water issues, so all the plumbing in the place was out of commission. But they didn't cancel their stuff for the day. They had us come anyway. And if anyone had to go to the bathroom or whatever, they had to leave the building and go to a separate building.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare. And then we got through the whole introductory part where they tell you about your civil duty and all that stuff. And then they're like, okay, the case got thrown out. You can go home.
Oh, good gosh.
I'm like, good. Because this was going to be terrible.
So, that it just dawned on me. What if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of it all? Can you just get up and go?
I have no idea. I've actually never served jury duty. I've only been called that one time.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I've been playing tour guide. I had another sister's weekend. Two of my other sisters and my niece came to visit. And I showed them around downtown Cheyenne. And then we went it's called Hobo Hot Springs. It's a hot springs in Saratoga, Wyoming. And it's free. And the water is in little spots in the river too. So you can go sit in the river and then jump in the cold. But I took them over this scenic pass, which I want to share with everyone. If you are ever out west in the mountains, before you do any sort of trips, research the roads you want to go on, because in the wintertime, a lot of these roads will shut down around November 15th. Sometimes they'll shut sooner because it gets so much snow up there, they can't plow them. So one of the scenic byways here in Wyoming, it opens up usually in May, and around middle of November, they shut it down just because there's so much snow. But we made it across. And I got to show my sisters some cool stuff. So
do the mapping apps like Google Maps and stuff, do they know about those closures, or do they still try to send people up there?
That's a good question. I know Wyoming has the Wyoming 511 app. I'm guessing other states might have that too, but they will do road updates because a lot of times between Cheyenne and Laramie, there's so much wind, the Interstate 80 gets shut down.
Because the locals would know. Right. And people that know locals would be warned, but people from out of state that are just following their GPS, I wonder if they end up stuck in that.
I mean, I'm guessing they would. I would hope they would.
I mean, they can figure out where the cops are sitting.
Right.
Although it's usually wrong.
Right.
So I guess if they can figure that out, they can put some priority in figuring out when the roads are closed.
But yeah, that's something that even the trails, sometime in the spring, a lot of the mountain trails, they will close while the snow is melting because so many people will rut up the trails with the mud, and they just don't have funds to take care of that.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to, you don't want it to be dangerous. I don't know if it's dangerous or not when it's that wet, but 2, you don't want them tearing up the trail. So yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. So a lot of times February, March, April, some of the trails are closed. So that was my weekend. I had a lot of a lot of fun with my sisters. It's always hard to see them go because I want to be close to family, but
Yeah.
I don't want to live where they live. I like where I live, so.
Yeah, yeah, that's so part of the reason I live where I live is because most of my family is around here.
Mhm.
But I have thought about moving not too far away, but moving out of this town that I'm in.
Mhm.
Just because there's certain times a year where it's kind of a pain to be a local here. They cater more to tourism than they do to us.
Yeah,
And that every October, and it gets really frustrating. Every October I start thinking about moving.
that's hard to be in a tourist town.
It is. It
It
is.
can be annoying for
It
sure.
is. And it feels like it takes up more of our year every year. Like it used to be, it was a weekend. They had a festival, and then it was 2 weekends, and now it's the entire month of October. And sometimes it bleeds into November. So it's like, so
Got to hunker down and just hide out in the house, right?
pretty much, pretty much. If we need to go out for groceries or something, we won't be able to get our parking spot when we come back. It's crazy. So,
Oh, so
yep.
are
But
you working
I've
on your
been
Jeep?
I've been spending like an hour here, 2 hours there, working on the wife's uh, unlimited, getting the lift kit put on. I think I talked about this on our last show that I had gotten started on it. Well, now the lift is on. I put the last piece on just last night, and that was the rear brake line relocation brackets,
Right.
right? And the reason they were last is because I opened up the box, um, and I didn't take like an inventory of all the pieces.
Oh, so couldn't find
There,
them all, or there went all.
well, there was a packing list in there that said they were included, right? However, when I went to install them, I couldn't find them. They're just like essentially like strips of metal, like 3 inches long, that bolt onto the old
Mhm.
location, and you bolt the brake line to the new location, and that's it, right? But couldn't find them in the box. So I don't know if they fell out of the box. I got the kit all the way back in May, and the tape was a little bit split on the one box, the main box that it came in, and
Oh,
I wonder if they fell out. I should
yeah.
have taken an inventory of all the pieces right then and contacted Metal Cloak, but I didn't. So I wrote them, and I was completely honest. I'm like, look, I got the kit back in May. I have no idea if these were in the box when I opened it. I don't know if I've lost them in the several months since May. But is there anything you can do for me, or do I have to order some? I'm like, I'll order them if I have to. It's like a $40 kit. It's not. It's not
But it was
ridiculous.
just the bolts. Couldn't you just figure out what size bolts they are and go
It
like.
wasn't just bolts. It's these little pieces, the
Oh, the
little
strips
brackets.
were gone too.
I could have made the brackets, right? I mean, they're just, I could have just taken 2 pieces of scrap steel and made my own, right? But I wrote them and they're like, no, we'll send them to you. I'm like,
Yep.
okay, that's cool. So they sent me out 2 sets. For some reason, they sent me
Oh,
2 sets.
bonus.
I'm like, they came today, but you sent me two. Why? And he's like, we shouldn't have sent you two. I don't know why you sent why we sent you two separate boxes and everything. So, and I'm like, do you want the other set back? He's like, don't worry about
Right.
it.
Bonus. Now
So,
you have to buy
yeah.
another Jeep.
Now I got to get another Jeep and another
Yeah.
Metal Cloak lift kit just to make use of the free parts that
Right.
I picked up.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Makes sense, right?
so. But yeah, I've been working on doing the install, and I have a bunch of other things that we're doing to the Jeep while it's in the garage. Like we got these little undercarriage lights when we were back at Bantam. She's got a couple other miscellaneous things that she wants done to the Jeep. I want to take the front bumper off. I had built a bumper for it like a year ago. I want to take that off and repaint it because the paint had chipped and it's rusty in spots. And the winch, I had bought a secondhand winch when I put it on there, and I found out that the free spool doesn't work. So I want to take the
Oh,
winch apart and fix
right.
the free spool. So there's all these things that I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to film as much of it as possible. So it's just taking forever because filming it, as I'm sure you're
That's
aware,
so
it
hard.
it
Yeah.
probably adds another 50% to the amount of
Yep.
time it takes to do a thing because you're not just getting down there and doing it. You're talking about why you do it, and you're talking about how you're doing it, and yeah. So I feel for the folks who do this for like a living.
Unless they have a photographer,
Yeah, it's
someone
probably
to do it for
easier.
them. Yeah,
It's easier. It's easier
definitely.
if you've got a videographer to go with you. But So yeah, that's what. Oh, and the drive shaft that I ordered last time around that came. I started working on getting that in. I need some silicone seal, and then I can put it in. So I went to do that yesterday and realized I didn't have that.
And can you just get that at like O'Reilly's or
Yeah,
AutoZone or whatever?
like some RTV or just some. You might even just be able to go to a hardware store and get silicone sealed like you'd use on a bathtub. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look and see if there's anything specific, but I'll probably just get some high temp RTV just in case. And that's because the yoke on the transfer case has to be taken off because the one for that Rosetta joint is different than you'll use with the
Right.
Tom Woods. So I got the old yoke off, which I thought was going to be a bear, and it was easier than I expected, which is actually kind of concerning. It almost felt like it wasn't as tight as it was supposed to be.
Wow.
It didn't fall off or anything, so maybe I dodged the bullet. I don't know.
So
But
it's funny when you take the factory parts off your Jeep. That's the hardest part of installs to me. I feel like getting the factory, whatever it is, even if it's the transfer case shifter knob or the bolts or the body mount bolts or whatever, that always seems to be the hardest.
Disassembly was definitely harder on this than assembly was. Now I did have some adjustments I had to deal with on the front end to adjust the caster for the axle because they got adjustable upper control arms to make that happen. But I've been through that before. It wasn't that hard.
Do you, after you do that, do you take it to get it professionally aligned on an alignment machine, or do you?
We'll see. There isn't much to align. The upper, the caster is one thing, but I can fiddle with that pretty easily on my own. The only other real alignment adjustment that should be changed is the length of the drag link, and that dictates whether the steering wheel is straight or not. And that's easy enough. As a collar, you loosen it up and you twist it, and it makes it longer or shorter.
Yep.
I adjusted that kind of by sight in the garage. We'll see how it goes once I get it out on the street. But as long as it drives straight, I'm probably not going to take it to get aligned. I know they advise you to do that, but they have to cover their butt, right? they almost have to say that. So, but yeah, shout out to Metal Cloak's customer service. I wanted to throw that in there. They did right here. I'm glad that because they could have easily said, no, you got to buy it. We can't we can't guarantee it. You're telling us you can't guarantee you didn't lose it. I can't. But no, they shipped it out to me.
Well, and I'm sure it wasn't like, oh, I lost my Dana 60 axle.
Exactly. It's not an expensive part. They charge like $37 for it on the website, which means, who knows what their markup is. It probably costs them half that or less to make them, right? They're not that much. Otherwise, they would have had me send that other set back.
Correct. So today, last week or last episode, we were going to talk about trail ratings. And we kind of pushed that aside because there's some trail closures going on in Moab, which keep listening, folks, because we're going to update you on that situation in the news segment coming up after our trail ratings segment. So we're going to talk about trail ratings and just what are trail ratings. There's many different kinds of trail ratings, and it can get very confusing, especially if you're a new Jeeper, or even if you're a Jeeper that's been wheeling on the West Coast and you go to the East Coast, or the East Coast and you go to the West Coast, because there's not like one universal rating system.
Right.
There's several different rating systems, so you need to be aware, and you also need to be aware of just when people tell you about trails, like, oh, that's an easy trail, or oh, that obstacle's not that bad. You need to know what they're driving, what their experience is, because you gotta be safe when you're out there in the trails and know.
Yeah,
I have things.
I have this conversation a lot when I'm guiding for the Jamboree, because part of the Jamboree is trail selection, right? We have 3 different tiers of trails at AOAA where we do the Jamboree. And when you get the absolute newbie coming up, they're like, what do these colors mean? What trail should I pick? I have no idea. And you look at their Jeep and you're like, well, your Jeep looks like it can do this. And there's a tech inspection that you go through as you come in, right? So that we have some idea of what their vehicle is capable of. But then you look at the person and you're like, how many times have you done this before? And they're like, this is my first time. I'm like, well,
let's
Your
do
Jeep
the
could do this, but what can you do and what are you
right,
comfortable with, right? And that's hard for me to judge, right?
right. So, gosh, what was it? 5 or 6 years ago at Roush Creek, they had the Crawlin' for Cops event. I think it was their second one. And some Jeepers, they were police officers in Montgomery County, Maryland, and they had Jeeps, and they're like, "Oh, we want to go do this." And so they signed up for and they all are Jeepers, but they've never off-roaded.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all stock vehicles, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to sign up for the blue trails because thin blue line." They were police
Yep.
officers,
Yep.
and I was with them in this group, and their Jeeps made it fine. But we were on Blue 23. I'll never forget this trail. I love Blue 23. It was a very rocky trail, not
Mm-hmm.
as bad as Rock Creek. Rock Creek. But anyway, they were like, we didn't know we were getting into this. And, one of them actually like got out of Jeeping because the bottom of his Jeep got all scratched up. The other one I'm still really good friends with, and we joke about Blue 23 all the time, but be careful what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
Know the lingo and what each different park or area uses. And we're going to go
Yep.
over that here.
And if the event that you're at has, and I'm not trying to talk bad about Crawling for Cops, but if they have the experience of running events, right? If they have a well-oiled machine that's checking people in, like the Jamboree does,
Right.
they'll try to spot that when you're getting in line or when you're picking trails, right? They won't, if because one, they don't want you to see you break your stuff. They don't
Right.
want you. They don't want to see you have a bad experience. And bottom line, they don't want to see you hold up the trails, right?
Correct. Right.
So, like the very, very like the simplest, the what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the bottom line, right, is that they don't want you on a trail that your Jeep isn't capable of.
And you would
Now,
hope that the trail guide could also
yeah,
filter some of this out.
yeah, yeah. Now, usually, trail guide will walk the line and they'll look at the vehicles and they'll decide, you know, like, do you know what you're in for by looking
Mhm.
at your vehicle, right?
Right.
Maybe they assumed. I don't know. Like, I
Right.
don't know. I don't know what the circumstances was that ended up with those folks on that trail. And again, I'm not trying to talk poorly of
No.
whoever
Oh,
was leading that or
yeah.
whatever. Like, oversights happen. We get it a lot where, somebody picks a blue, they know, they quote unquote know what they're getting into, but they get into it and they're like, this isn't at all what I expected.
Right.
And they want out. So,
Exactly.
it happens. It happens.
So I don't know if you want to go over the
Sure. So I threw a couple links into our
Yep.
notes for a couple different rating systems. Right now, the first link covers two different rating systems, and it's from
American Trails. Yep.
AmericanTrails.org.
.org.
And but the thing is, they only list two systems, and neither of them are the system that's in use here in Eastern PA.
Mhm.
So
Of
this
course
tells
not.
you what you're in for, right? When you're starting to look up trail rating systems. But we'll go through them kind of the way we had the links set up here. The first one they go over is one that they say, I mean, they call out regions that these are used in, and this does very much seem like a regional thing, right?
Mhm.
Color symbols, and they say that this is from a group in Gorman, California, right? And Tammy, you said that you've
I'm
heard this lingo used by other people that you know of from California, right?
Yeah, and definitely in the Southern California region. Um, Definitely have heard the colored symbols before.
Right. So these go green circle, so it's like a green dot, blue square, black diamond, and orange blazed. And the green circle is like the easy trails. They refer to them as the most highly developed class of trails,
Mhm.
which is almost road like. So picture like a dirt road or an access road. Maybe a little bit of skill required, but you can take pretty much anything that's four-wheel drive through this. Maybe even not four-wheel drive. Maybe you can be taking your Honda Crosstrek or Honda. Is that the word I'm looking for? The all from those supposed camping rigs we covered a couple weeks ago.
So the interesting thing about this is for these trail ratings are for the rig, not necessarily the person's
Right.
capability, because
Well, how do you put a number on a person's capability?
Right.
You know, that's very much a personal thing. You have to understand that yourself. But putting people on a trail based on what their rig can handle is probably easier. Like it's easier to put a rating on
Yes.
that.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, then blue square. These are like medium trails. They list it as more difficult. It says suitable for the majority of intermediate riders. More difficult trails are narrower, steeper, things like that. Switchbacks, whatever. Intended for off-highway vehicle enthusiasts with well-developed skills seeking a reasonably challenging trail ride. Now, you were talking about a blue trail. You were talking about your friends who were in, who maybe weren't quite suited for that trail. I've taken stock rigs on blue trails. I've
Right.
driven the LJ
Exactly.
on blue trails. Yes, you contact things, you hit rocks, you scrape things. You have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing. My two-door JK, which was on stock street tires, the first time I took it wheeling, I had that on a blue trailer too. I wouldn't do it frequently on that particular build because it just didn't have the clearance it needed. But it did okay with the good spotter and the right person behind the wheel. So that's why this thing is sort of objective, right? Subjective?
Subjective.
Subjective might be the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, when I had I had my Sahara when it was still stock, I took it on a blue trail or two. It was scary as all get out, but I had a good spotter and I made it over the rocks and the obstacles, but you have to know yourself.
Right.
And some stock Jeeps, you'd be surprised at what they can do.
Right. And then Black Diamond. Now, you might notice that these are similar to like ski slope ratings.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's where these are derived from or if they're both derived from the same other system. I don't know. And Black Diamond is considered the most difficult. This is generally for highly modified rigs and people that are more experienced. And then the Orange Blazed is actually a motorcycle trail. That's what they
And I had
use
never heard that
this
before
system.
until
Neither have I.
Yeah. Learn something new every day.
Yeah. Then the other one that's covered in this article is the numeric rating system, and this goes just 1 to 10, and it's just what you'd expect. 1 is the easiest, 10 is the hardest. But the idea here is that you can get a lot more granular with these numbers, right? So between a 1 and a 2 and a 3, these all might be really similar, right? But you can get a little more specific in 1, 2, and 3 than you can with those all being green.
Right.
I think did it have numbers associated with the green and blue? No, it didn't.
No,
I think there was another one I was reading that does. Oh, the Jeep Jamboree one does. We'll get to that one a little bit. And I'm not going to go through all 10, but you can understand, right? 5 to 6 would be like a blue. 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 would be a green. 7, 8, 9 might be a black. Maybe 10 would be a black. It just says severe conditions, extreme caution recommended for blacks. Impassable by stock vehicles, winching required, trail building necessary. That's another thing we can talk about, trail building, right?
Some people are like totally
very,
against that.
very opposed to that, right? Maybe impassable under anything but ideal conditions. So, I mean, is that a black? That sounds worse than a black if you ask, if you read the description, right?
Right. That sounds like scary as all get out. It's interesting because the Rubicon Trail is a black.
Yeah.
Or I mean 10.
Okay.
And I did that trail on my 3.5-inch lift with 35-inch tires. I did not require winching. Some of the other people in our group did. But the other thing you need to be aware of on the Rubicon Trail, there are different paths you can take. You can take the harder path. And I think some of these trail ratings, that's what they're rated for, these other obstacles.
So if you're on a trail that's 99% green and has one obstacle that's black, the whole trail is probably going to get rated black.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Especially if you can't bypass it.
Right. Well, and I know Hell's Revenge, the Jeep Badge of Honor, rates it as a 5 or 6. but that's including all the different little offshoot obstacles that you can or cannot do.
Right. And the other thing I've heard about the Rubicon is that 10 rating comes from the Jeep Jamboree's rating system.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, the Jeep Jamboree has limited their participants to 37-inch tires or smaller. Right. So a black on 37s and a black on 42s, totally different.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So again, right, this is all stuff you're going to have to try. And as the sport matures, or as the sport, maybe even as the pockets of the people participating in the sport get deeper, and Jeep builds get larger, or off-road rig builds get larger, these trail rating systems have to adapt,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we've got at AOAA, and we'll talk about the rating systems there. Mammoth, the man-made thing,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't fit any of the trail rating systems there. So on the maps, it's just like colored in plaid.
Oh.
Because it's like it's harder than anything in the whole park.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So, what would you call that?
Right. Is that like a rock buggy trail, or
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, it's basically well, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but I was talking to some folks from the park when I was there for the Jamboree in, I think it was the most recent one, which was what, August? Late August?
Mm-hmm.
September. And they said at that point, only one person had finished the entire stretch of Mammoth.
And that was like some young kid, right?
15-year-old kid in a custom-built rear steer buggy.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. So then there's a couple other systems here. You have Trails Off-Road listed.
Yeah.
That's a trail mapping app, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trails Off-Road.
And what they do is, and I'm guessing they're using this 1 through 10 list that you just showed.
Mm-hmm.
But when they map the trails and they tag them, I guess, make waypoints.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, oh, you're going to go over this obstacle here at this waypoint, or you're going to do this at this waypoint. But they also rate the trails. I don't think they have a rating system, but I just wanted folks to be aware that they have this trail rating 1 through 10, which I'm guessing is the same as what you just read. Just like the Jeep Badge of Honor that you can download. It's an app from Jeep. And they have the same type of thing. They'll rate the trails 1 through 10.
OnX does something similar too. I don't think I haven't used OnX enough to know what system they use, but I'm pretty sure it's a 1 to 10 system.
Right. And then there are places, I know some places in Arizona, they use a 1 to 6. But their 1 to 6 is like the 1 to 10. So 6 is super difficult.
Yeah.
So depending on which area you're in, you got to figure out what, because they may say, oh, this is a 6. And you're like, oh, I've done a 6 before. Well, not their 6. So
right.
You gotta ask.
And I also linked the Jeep Jamboree's trail rating system just as sort of a point of reference, right? And they also use a 1 to 10 scale, but they also use a color rating scale, and they use a shape scale.
They got it all covered.
They have green dot, which are 1 to 2.
Uh-huh.
They have blue square, which are 3 to 5. They have a yellow triangle. No one else had yellow. No one else had a triangle. Jamboree has a yellow triangle, 6 to 7. And then they have black diamond, 8 to 9, and double black diamond, 10. Right, and you can read their descriptions. And it's funny if you look at the pictures. There, the picture of the guy on the black diamond, the double black diamond, looks like a stock Rubicon, maybe on 33s, a TJ Rubicon, and he's just like getting wild with it.
Oh, the little red thing?
Yeah.
Oh, he's on 3 wheels.
That doesn't look that built at all.
No, it looks totally stock. Maybe some off-road tires.
Yeah. So, but and that just goes to show you, that looks like it's a Jamboree vehicle. You can see the logo on the side. So that's probably a very experienced driver doing that, I hope.
Well, I know that a lot of the some of the Jeeps that do the Rubicon Trail, they're like the flatties and the original Jeeps, and those guys can get through those
Well,
trails.
you got into the sport later. Maybe you don't know this. Do you know that the Jeep used to take every model before it left the production line, like before a new design started going to mass production, they would take it through the Rubicon Trail.
I did not. Did I know
So
that? I
so the
knew.
Jeep, like the Jeep Cherokee, had been through the Rubicon Trail.
Right.
They stopped it after the Liberty, if I remember correctly. The original Liberty, which had those round headlights and like the
Mhm.
bulbous hood, that was the last model that went through. So the Wrangler Rubicon went through the Rubicon Trail.
Stock.
Stock. They
Right?
do it
Yeah.
stock. Now, stock, quote unquote stock, right? Like, did they do anything to them? Did they disconnect sway bars? Did they stack rocks? Like, we
Right.
don't know, right?
Right.
But they wanted the bragging rights that every Jeep vehicle went through the Rubicon Trail. So before they started production of a new model, they would go through the Rubicon Trail. So that meant like the Grand Cherokee had been through the Rubicon Trail.
I know I did when I was working at the Jeep dealer. I took some of those classes, and I was. They have a whole system for putting the trail rated badge on these vehicles and
Yeah.
what they go through. And I know that some of them they did stuff on the Rubicon Trail, but I didn't realize they actually did the whole trail. I knew they went out there and
Yeah, I think
tested them.
like 2001 or 2, maybe 2003 was when they stopped doing it.
Mhm.
Because I think they realized that not everything with the Jeep logo on it has to be that capable, right?
Right.
But yeah, that was what they used to do.
Yeah, most Patriot owners are probably not gonna head out to the
Yeah.
Rubicon Trail.
Yeah, and that's, some people argue that's when the Jeep line started to get diluted, but
Mhm.
whatever, they have to be competitive.
Right. They're a business. They
Yep.
have to make their money. So on the East Coast, I know Rush Creek and AOA
Yeah.
have a different trail rating system. I don't know if
Yeah,
Windrock does the same or
I don't know, because when I was looking for trail rating systems to prepare for this show, I didn't come across anyone that uses the trail rating system that I'm familiar with at AOAA and Roush Creek. And this goes back to the Paragon days, right? I don't know what it's like outside of this area,
Mhm.
but they just go blue, green, black, and red. Like
And
those are the four.
Rush Creek has purple. Do they still have purple?
I
Like
don't know.
one of the probably one or two of the last times I was there, there were some purple trails. Like there's one that parallels Rock Creek that they
Are
made it
they
purple. It's in between a red and a no, a blue and
maybe
a
in between a
red.
blue and a black or something?
How does it go? Green, blue. Red
Yeah,
is the hardest, right?
blue and
Yeah.
black would be the two that you might straddle.
Yeah, so I think purple was in between blue and black.
Yeah, we don't have trail, at least at AOAA, we don't have them officially labeled that way, right? But folks who know the trails will describe like a hard green as a dark green,
Mhm.
or
Oh.
a hard blue as a dark blue,
Huh.
right?
Okay,
You
that's
know,
interesting.
so or a
And
light blue if it's an easy blue, right?
so at those parks, they have maps too,
Yep,
right? Do they still
yep.
hand out maps, and is there like an app where you can
Yeah,
go?
we used to use an app called Maprika,
I remember that.
which yeah, you probably saw it the day I took you up there.
Yep.
Kyle at Off Road Consulting would make maps for both parks, Rash Creek and AOAA, and he would upload them to Maprika because that app lets you upload custom maps, which is what makes it really powerful. And it has this cool feature where you can share your location with people you're friends with. So imagine if you're part of, I don't know, a Jeep Jamboree, and there's 24 guides in the park leading around different groups, and you can see where all the other groups are. Wouldn't that be really cool?
Uh, it was. I loved that app.
Yeah, it was a
You
really
knew
good app.
exactly where you were, and I was able to guide a group. We were like, "Oh, let's go wheeling," and I'm like, "Okay." And I'm thinking they're gonna lead the trail, and they're like, "No, you're Jeep Mama. You're gonna lead the trail."
You get to lead.
And I'm like, "Holy cow!" And that app saved me. I mean, I got turned around a couple of
Yeah.
times just because I have some sort of map reading dyslexia where I get turned
No,
around.
it happens. It happens to me too. And I mean, I know the park, and it happens to me.
Right. So
Because you come up to an intersection, there's 28 different ways you can turn, and you're like, okay, I need number 1, 2, 3, 4. No, crap, it was 5.
right, right. And your little dots moving down the wrong trail. You're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, we got to turn around. But I loved that app, and I loved having the maps because it showed you exactly if it was a green, a blue, red, whatever.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you knew.
And that's so Maprika, unfortunately, the people who make Maprika seem to have stopped developing it. And those features where it lets you share your location or whatever have stopped working.
Oh,
So we're working on switching over to Onyx Off Road, and like for the amount of financial backing Onyx has versus the amount of financial backing Maprika had, which was none. Like it was just some guy, I think, making an app
right.
in his own spare time, right?
Some kid in his
Um,
basement.
Onyx has some really cool features, but it doesn't have the stuff that made Maprika really powerful, like the ability to upload your own map,
Right.
right? So I don't know, maybe that'll develop. But
So
I know
what do
there's
people do now out there?
so
Can
you can
you
still
still Oh,
use Maprika if you have the app on your phone already and you've already got the maps downloaded. And it seems to still work on Android. It's on iPhone it doesn't work, but a lot of people are on iPhone
oh.
anymore, so it's hard to tell people go get this app. And especially for groups like us where we have a bunch of guides, if we want to standardize on one, it has to work on both,
Mhm.
right? So um yeah, it feels like Maprika's dying. I still use it on my trail tablet here. I still have Maprika on my little Android tablet,
Oh, that's
but
cool.
I've switched my own like normal use over to an Apple tablet, and I can't get Maprika on it. I'd love to use that in the Jeep because it's newer, it's faster, and it's whatever. But I can't because I can't get Paprika. I have to go to Onyx, and I don't have the familiarity with it yet that I'm comfortable enough to use it on the trails.
Now, have you ever used Gaia GPS?
I haven't. A lot of people have suggested that. I'll have to try it sometime.
I mean, it's especially awesome out west because there's such a vast amount of trails and forest roads, and it's really good. The only thing that I have a problem with is you have to zoom in really far or really close, I guess you'd call it, to find the trails.
Yeah.
Um, and then and then when you zoom back out to see where it ends, you can't really do that. You just kind of have to follow it. But it's a really good, and especially if you can find other people who have mapped the trails, like Hole in the Rock is a Jeep Edge of Honor trail. It's the Mormon trail that they carved out to go to the Colorado River way back in the 1800s, 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
But that trail, you could get totally lost on that because some of it's just the flat slick rock, and you're like, we could drive anywhere.
Where do I go?
Where do we go? And if you have the actual map that someone else has already taken, you can just follow that blue line or green line or whatever
Right.
color that it has been picked, and you can just follow it. So if you're heading out west, it's extremely helpful to have the Gaia GPS. We're kind of moving on to good apps to have when
Yeah,
you're off-roading
right.
now.
I did a video. It's getting kind of aged at this point where I reviewed a whole bunch of different mapping apps. Gaia GPS might have been one of them, but a lot of people have commented on my video and said I didn't give Gaia GPS enough of a go because it didn't. Maybe I didn't know how to use it or something. I don't know because
Mhm.
it felt very lacking as compared to other apps that I had tried. So I keep meaning to retry it. So maybe I'll go back and do that someday and give you guys another review, and then we can talk about it on the show.
What you could do is come out west and test it out here.
I feel like it would be a whole different experience
Yeah.
because the trails in my area, There's a couple dirt access roads and stuff like
Mhm.
that, which do show up on Onyx Off-Road, but they're not like firing up Onyx Off-Road to go find a place to go wheeling for a weekend is not a thing I do out here because there's nowhere to do it,
Exactly. Right.
right? But out west, it might be different. So
It totally is. Exactly. Because it's not like, oh, I'm going to go to the, blah, blah, blah off-road park here. You need to go search out your own trails. You need to,
right,
do your
totally different
research.
circumstance.
Yeah.
Out here, we have to pay to wheel.
Yes, that I heard it's getting really, really expensive now.
Roush Creek has been raising their prices. AOAA is holding firm.
Uh-huh.
I don't think they've upped it at all. Now, I don't think I paid to wheel there at all this year. My God, that feels terrible. I got to wheel more.
Yeah, it's, life.
One day. I think I was out there one day. I paid to wheel.
So before if you're new to the sport, just kind of do a little research and actually if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Nate or I. We can help guide you.
Yeah.
And let you know, like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea to go to a double black diamond in your stock Sahara.
But if you do try it, get video.
Yes. Yes, and share it with us. But yeah, or
yeah,
even
no, it's
and be careful who you ask about the trails too. Because, someone who's a very experienced off-roader, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, that trail is not bad at all."
Yep.
When it really is for you, it could be a very difficult trail. So just be careful who you ask.
For me nowadays, a blue trail is like the bottom for me. Green trails are no challenge at all. Blue trails are basically what green trails used to be.
Correct.
In my gauge for things right now, if you ask me where should I go wheeling, I'm not going to apply my gauge to you. I'm going to try to figure out what's good for you. But not everyone's going to do that. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that's easy. Because a lot of people, the ego gets in the way.
Correct.
They're like, oh, if you're going to be wheeling, don't even bother on those greens. Well, maybe greens is all you're ready for. And, don't let the ego get in your way. That's how you get hurt or broken.
And it's good to start off that way because you learn how to pick your lines, and that just makes you a better wheeler.
Right.
In the long run.
So yeah. If someone tells you it's easy, try to find the rating. See if it's rated. See if the trail's rated and look it up. And hopefully that'll give you a better judge of whether you're ready for that trail. So.
Right.
All right. I think that's it for trail ratings.
I think we covered it all.
So if you guys are...
If we didn't, please let us know.
Yes. Reach out. If you guys are enjoying this content, please subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Off-Road Insiders Podcast, and subscribe there. You can watch us live. We go every other Monday. And if you want to reach out to us, you can either do it through the offroadinsiders.com website or email us, offroadinsiders@gmail.com. But stick around tonight. We still have lots of news to talk about.
Yeah. Last week we talked about the BLM decision to close tons of trails in the Moab area. And we just wanted to update you on that situation. We got a group of the Blue Ribbon Coalition. I think I said that right. And the state of Utah and a group of off-roading activists, which is the Blue Ribbon Group. And there's, I can't think of the other group. It's Colorado. My bad. I can't think of it off the top of my head. They've filed.
I remember the Blue Ribbon Coalition was all over this article. I don't remember the other group.
Oh yeah, here it is. Colorado Off-Road Trail Defenders. It's in this article. We'll have the article in our show notes, but they've each filed separate appeals challenging the recent BLM Bureau of Land Management travel plan that's going to close more than 300 miles of dirt roads and trails near Moab. The state of Utah filed a notice of appeal to fight this management plan that they did, which was announced in late September.
So there's something important you mentioned there. The state of Utah.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just like wheelers. This isn't just some group of people. This isn't just
Correct.
a group of buddies. This is the government fighting the government.
Correct. And it's interesting because when I was sharing the story about in Arizona, where they were able to stop the BLM, it was the local, I think it was Mojave County, I think, or Grand County, Mojave County. They are the ones who stopped BLM. And
Yeah.
now it's the locals kind of want the trail shut down and the state doesn't. So it's just interesting. It depends on who are in these positions with the county
Yeah.
government, the city
Right.
government, that type of thing.
Right. Yeah. In this case, the state government is more interested in open access to these trails, and the federal government is trying to tell them, no, you can't. So yeah, the state government is trying to fight with the federal government, which is
Right.
it's crazy. You'd think that the state government would have been consulted. Like, why did it come to this where
Right.
now the state government has to argue with the federal government? You think that would have happened before they because this is essentially done. They've already passed it, right?
Right. And they're filing an appeal.
Yeah, they're trying to appeal it now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, and I don't know, maybe there were fights to begin with, and this is just a continuation of that. I don't know.
Yeah, they're saying the new travel plan, this plan that they did to stop this, environmental groups were very happy, and the Grand County Commission, which is the county that most of these trails are in, and they pushed for the most restrictive option.
Yeah.
And not
And
everybody agrees with that. And
they also said that folks that are on the far opposing end of this argument are the ones that fought for that most restrictive action, and that's the one they went with. So that's unfortunate. It doesn't sound like a compromise to me, is what I'm getting at.
right.
Like, I'm okay if there's two opposing sides and they talk to each other and they make concessions that say, okay, well,
Compromises.
you can have this and you can have that, right? No, this sounds like, no, we're going to go with them. Bye.
Right. And it was kind of like everyone else who was like for keeping all these places open. They just ignored those comments.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, they don't want these vehicles driving out to these primitive campsites. You know, these most of these environmental groups are people who like hike, or who don't want anybody out on these lands. They just want nature out there. So anyway, we'll continue to follow this. If you guys know of anything that's happening that we may not catch, please reach out and let us know. Somebody did that on our Facebook page and pointed us in another direction where we were able to find some more information. We appreciate that.
In fact, I think this got called out on one of our comments somewhere.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, obviously this is kind of the biggest news that's catching attention right now. We can't see everything. So if you hear of something that's a little smaller, a little more local, let us know if you want to hear us talk about it.
And so both Nate and I found this really, I think it's kind of funny. But it's a story about off-road driving school.
Oh, the next article, right? Yeah. I wanted to add, right? So I live in a state where there's almost no such thing as public land that's open to motorized vehicles, right? The only thing we have are paid parks. We talked about this just a few minutes ago, right? And it's not the end of the world, but it sure would be nice to not live in a state that's so closed, right? So keep that in mind when you're looking at Moab right now. Like, oh, they only took a few trails. Oh, it's only a couple hundred miles. There's still thousands that are open. If you end up like Pennsylvania is, you're going to regret it. So you stay on top of this kind of stuff. So that's all I wanted to say.
You give them an inch and they'll start taking more and more and more and more.
Yeah, maybe it'll be decades. Maybe it'll be hundreds of years before they're all closed, right? But the point is, we don't want to see that happen. And, you know, I get it. There's two sides to every argument. there are idiots that are going to go out there and destroy the land, and they're going to make us all look bad. We talked about this in several other episodes at this point. Those people shouldn't do that. Is really what it comes down to.
Right.
So,
and sometimes you need to be the police out on the trails too.
Yeah.
To say, hey, you really shouldn't be doing that. Some people just don't know.
Don't be afraid to call people out. Yeah. Just do it safely, because sometimes when you're out in the middle of nowhere, could be a little intimidating. All right, on to our next article. Pop this open here. So Ford, not wanting to be outdone by Jeep. First of all, they brought the Bronco back.
Yeah, which, I just find it funny.
Like I have mixed, like when Ford announced the Bronco, a lot of hardcore Jeep enthusiasts were like, they're just trying to copy Jeep. Or look at them trying to copy us, yada, yada, yada. I wasn't that guy. Personally, I think the Bronco is a great addition to the whole landscape of off-road vehicles because it gives people choice. And what does choice do to a market where all the vehicles are expensive? It should drive price down. It seems like it did the opposite, unfortunately. Everything's more expensive now. Maybe it's not the Bronco's fault. But the idea that the Wrangler has, the Bronco, some people are saying they basically just took the Wrangler as a template and made a Ford product. Right? So think what you want. But I think it's good. It's good to have more choice, right? But anyway, very similar to some of the community and whatnot that surrounds the Wrangler, Ford is trying to build something similar, and they started this off-road driving school thing, which is very similar to the Jeep Jamboree Academy stuff, right? Which is of course sponsored by Jeep. I think it's or backed by Jeep or whatever, right? You buy a trail rated Jeep, they give you a pass to go to the Adventure Academy, right? Well, that's similar to what Ford was doing. This was you had to buy a Bronco, either the Sport or the Bronco. I don't know what you call that. The not sissified Bronco.
Yeah. Is there? I can't remember. Is there a name for it?
I think it's just the Bronco.
Yeah.
I know the Bronco Sport is more of a creature comfort SUV, and the Bronco is more like the off-road vehicle.
Right. So, okay.
Anyway, it used to be you had to buy a vehicle, and then you could take these off-road driving courses. Now they're opening them up to a broader audience. I read this article twice, and the first time I read it through, I got the impression that they let you drive a Bronco in their course. The second time I read it, I'm not so sure. So, did you read it? What's the impression you got?
Yeah,
Can I bring my Jeep to Bronco driving school?
I think you can, but as a non-Bronco owner, you only get 4 hours, while those with a Bronco at home can sign up for a 1.5-day course.
That's what I got out of it the second time I read through it.
Yeah.
Okay. The first time I was apparently not reading the right words.
But I'm I would be curious. I would love to see where they're taking you.
They listed the locations here. There was one in Texas.
Oh, I missed. Where's that at? I didn't see.
I remember reading it.
It does say something about the Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Off-road Bronco rodeo was previously only to owners. Yada yada yada.
Oh, it's a Ford F-150 Raptor Assault experience.
Oh,
you could go on the Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Where did I read this? I swear they listed the locations when I read through it. Maybe I was imagining it. But I remember they said there was one in Texas. I thought there was one in Nevada.
Maybe I'll reach out to him and say, "Hey, will you let me come do
here
off-road podcast? Do a YouTube video."
It's in the second sentence, Tammy. We're both blind.
Oh, I'm going way down.
Bronco off-road locations in Nevada, Texas, and Utah.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I'm scrolling way down. Yeah.
That's what I was doing too. Because the first couple sentences of anything is always just filler, right? Exactly. I just skipped right by it. Well, apparently the filler is where they talked about the locations.
Our bad. Yep.
So yeah, if you want to go take a Ford-sponsored, probably Bronco-heavy sales pitch of a off-road training course, go ahead.
And if you do, let us know what it's like.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I'm not one of these like other brand haters. I do think
No.
the Bronco is a pretty interesting vehicle, and if I had unlimited funds, I would certainly buy one to tinker with and see what it's like. But I just
And
can't
I
afford that many vehicles.
no, I know. I love the colors that they have on there. That's what I love about Jeep and the Broncos, all the unique colors. It's not just the gray and the dark gray and the white and the red.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all
There are
different
some vehicles
cool.
that come in three colors, and all of them are just different shades of
Right.
gray.
Right. Right. So
So,
well, I didn't even read this. Hundreds of cars towed.
oh, I meant to read this more closely.
Oh my goodness, getting stuck at a muddy
They were at a
fireworks
concert.
event. Yeah.
Yeah, fireworks event. So, let's see here. Let's see if I can if I can
Yeah.
quickly skim this. Um, it
Some
was
group, or I can't pronounce it. It's out of
yeah,
it's
this is
from
in the
BBC
UK
News.
if I
So
remember
yeah.
correctly.
So this Leicestershire and Rutland 4x4 response team had fun that day, I guess.
Yeah, right.
These 11 vehicles helped pull out 300 cars that were trapped. Can you imagine?
The group said it had sent more than 11 vehicles to help more than 300 cars that were trapped at the site. Yeah. So this is from Yahoo News, by the way. We're getting bad about
Oh yeah, we
citing
gotta.
the sources here.
Yeah, oopsie. There,
uh,
we cite them in our show notes, people.
yeah, right. You can go read them
There you
there.
go. But that would be kind of fun. But
Rescue
after
Charity said
about
previously
like
that contact.
the 50th car, I'd be like, okay, I'm done. You guys here's some boots, walk yourself out.
Yeah.
That would be exhausting. So that would be 11 into 300. I can't even do math right now. That'd be like about 20 some cars that each person had to pull out.
Yeah, almost 30 cars a pop.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
So
So
next time you guys are
I
going to
guess
some sort of event where the parking is in a field
yeah,
or
yeah.
a dirt lot, check your
And
weather.
the picture shows like a pickup truck pulling out what looks like a hatchback.
Yeah,
Just like
like
a plain old
kind of like a station wagon type.
street
Yeah.
car hatchback. This is like I don't know. I feel like people in general are trading capability for convenience anymore, right? And the reason this struck me was that exactly, right?
When you say
Like
convenience, what do you mean by convenience?
the convenience of having a comfortable vehicle that's good on fuel and fits all the kids, and like I get it. Those are important things in life.
Mhm.
But finding that vehicle that is also capable of things like getting you out of a muddy field at after the concert is over, after the fireworks display is over, I feel like you don't have choices on those anymore. You have to pick and choose, right? And most people are choosing the very friendly commuter vehicle instead of the capable off-road vehicle.
Right.
And
And when you're up in snow country, you gotta
yeah,
really consider.
yeah, exactly. So, like, I work remotely now, so I don't have to drive into work anymore. But when I did have to commute to an office, um, any sort of a snowfall was an excuse for everyone to call out of work, right?
Right.
And I was the guy that was like trying to make it there, right? And I'd get there, and my reward would be I was the only one.
Right.
Like the boss was there and me, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just a different approach to how I think people should live life. But
And the interesting thing here in Wyoming, what I have noticed, I mean, in Maryland, if there is a flake of snow, they are pouring sand and salt all over those roads. And the plow trucks are constantly going. And it's interesting, when my sister was here, there was a sign when we were going through the mountain. The sign said no snow plowing between 5 p.m. and 7 a.m.
okay,
And so they're not plowing the roads during that time. And here in town, like it just snowed a couple couple weekends ago, and they didn't plow. They don't typically plow. You just kind of you drive, and they don't put any salt here in town. There's no sand. I think they just use it on the interstate. But depending on the region you live in, you got to be, conscious of that. So I do fine, except I kind of slid down a hill into the intersection, and my little squiggly car line traction control was
Oh,
going
right.
wonky because I was kind of going a little too fast, going down a hill, and um, so
It's
just
it's really easy to slide in the snow, so I can't blame
yeah,
you there.
especially if they're not plowing and it melts and it freezes, melts and freezes, it turns into ice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I've had quite a few exciting but very very slow drives home from work in my
Mhm.
life.
Yep. Same here.
I tell you what, I drove a Patriot as a commuter vehicle for a couple of years,
Oh, that's
right?
right. I remember that.
And that thing was good in the snow. For all of its not off-road prowess. It could drive in the snow. Like as far as commuting in the snow went, it was good at
Mhm.
that. It had a similar traction control to what the Wrangler has because it's still a Jeep vehicle. And it did have four-wheel drive, selectable four-wheel drive, only four high, it didn't have four low or anything. But that thing worked. It really did. It worked.
So Mike, who is in our chat room with us, by the way, if you um, watch us live while we're recording this podcast, you can join us in the chat room and talk with Nate and I and whoever else is in there. And Mike said that some people confuse all-wheel drive with four-wheel drive. And there's a
Yeah.
difference
And
between the
it's
two.
all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive are like there's similarities, right? But they are not the same. Except in some circumstances they are very similar. Like the Cadillac that I use as a tow rig is all-wheel drive. And the front axle had gone out in it. The thing has like 120,000 miles on it. I don't know what went wrong, but the front axle, like something had cooked itself inside the differential. I had to have the front end replaced. And when I was talking to my mechanic afterward, and I'm like, so like, what's in there that makes the all-wheel drive work? And he's like, it's just the same front axle you'd find in a four-wheel drive pickup.
Huh.
So I don't know. Is that just the way Cadillac and GM do all-wheel drive? He said it looks like it's just a vehicle that has a transfer case you can't turn off. I'm like, well, that's
Interesting.
weird. But yeah, like the Subaru Outback or whatever that has all-wheel drive, those are not the same as a normal four-wheel drive system because they
Mhm.
kind of can't be. And again, I don't understand how the Cadillac does it. There has to be something in there that allows the front and rear to spin at different speeds because otherwise you'd end up with all kinds of binding and stuff on the road. So I don't know. Maybe that's why the axle wore out the way it did.
Right.
So maybe every 120,000 miles, I'm going to be putting a front axle in this thing. I don't know. So
Well, I think that's it for news. We are at our
we're a couple minutes over as
yeah.
usual, but this has been a good conversation.
Yeah, I had a good time sharing my knowledge, what little I have. Actually,
Oh, don't talk like
I
that.
could say that. I could have said that 10 years ago. Can you believe it? It's been 10 years. But I feel like I've grown so much and learned so much.
Every now and then I think back about how long I've been driving off-road vehicles, and it's like 25 years for me now.
Holy, time just flies.
I was 19 when I got my first off-road vehicle,
Yeah. Well, I wasn't that young.
S10 Blazer.
Good times. So
Yeah,
what should we can we come up with a topic now or should we
that's right. We didn't plan for
I
next week's
know.
topic, did
Oh,
we?
for shame on us.
Tune in next time where we talk about something off-road related,
Exactly.
and we give our commentary on the news.
Or maybe we'll find somebody to interview. Maybe we can
we
have
we could do
someone
that.
interview.
That's actually a great point. If anyone listening either wants to be on the show or knows someone they'd like to hear us talk to, let us know. offroadinsiders@gmail.com. I promise we check the email address. I should probably go check it now that I've said that.
Oi. We got to get our plan going here. We started out so good trying to have a plan.
Well, I think both of us, we've been busy the past couple of weeks.
But I will say one thing I've learned since I headed out west is, it's good to kind of have a plan, but also you should let the adventure lead you.
Yeah.
And, you don't always need a plan. So there you go. We're going to let the adventure lead us.
In stark contrast to the last podcast that you were on, that's exactly how I run a show.
Yep.
There's a topic, we talk about it. Maybe we hit all the points. Maybe we planned out what we're going to talk about.
But we don't script it all, and we're not reading. We're not reading. I think that's just so much better.
More fluid this way. All right. So, let me think. What else did if there's any topics you guys want to hear us talk about, let us know. If you want to subscribe to the show, look anywhere you normally subscribe to podcasts. If you can't find us, let us know we're not there, and I will try to fix that problem. Watch us live every other Monday, youtube.com. I guess we don't have a vanity URL yet, do we? Look for the Off-Road Insiders podcast, or go to offroadinsiders.com, and you can get to our YouTube video through there, or get to our YouTube channel through there. And with that, I feel like there was something else I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it was.
I just think if you just search Off-Road Insiders, you'll find us.
You should be able to.
Yeah.
If you can't, that's also a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, spread the word. We need more listeners or viewers. I mean, what's the point of doing a podcast if no one's listening, right?
And Mike, thanks for joining us in the chat room.
Yeah, absolutely. So go steal your friends' phones and subscribe them to the show, and hopefully they'll like what they hear.
Good idea. All right, y'all have a great week.
Let me find the button here. All right. So yeah, everyone have a great one, and we will catch you in 2 weeks. Good night.